What's up, guys? Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today we're going to be discussing Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back, guys, to Unboxing the Controversy, a series in which we look at some controversial films. They could be controversial for multiple reasons. And today we're discussing Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, this film had a lot riding on it for Warner Bros. And DC, and it was a massive film in 2016, the year of its release. Now, this is a sequel to Man of Steel. It's directed by Zack Snyder, and it's basically the jump pad for the DC extended universe. This film was supposed to set in motion a whole host of DC films, including Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Justice League, and was finally going to see Batman and Superman on the big screen together. Now, as I said, this film was released in 2016. At the time, of course, Marvel was heading into its phase 3, gearing up to Infinity War. So there was a lot riding on DC to try and catch up with Marvel. In this discussion, we'll be seeing how well they did in that and why they didn't catch up to Marvel's success. I'm joined by Matthew Chollerton, who's
Hello.
joined me in several discussions. Hello.
Hello.
And first and foremost, Matthew, your initial reaction when you saw this film
Meh.
way back when? Meh.
I don't know. I thought
Yeah.
it was a mess, and I thought it was a pointless movie. If I'm going to be honest with you, it's pointless. What was the point of it?
Yeah.
Apart from trying to make money.
Yeah, there was of course I remember the first trailer being released, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this looks really good. It looks like it's going to be a decent film." You know, everyone was looking forward to it. And then I remember the controversial second trailer was released, which showed Doomsday at the end of that trailer. And it was by that point that people started questioning whether the film was actually going to be very good. It's amazing how just one like 5-second piece of a trailer can really stick in people's minds and make them think the film isn't going to be very good. Now, when this film was released, initial reaction was pretty good. The box office performance was strong at first, and critics were saying this film is all right. However, then the film experienced a historic drop in its second weekend in terms of how much money it was making at the box office, and the film never recovered from that. And fans and critics alike started saying that this film was jam-packed with too much stuff, there was too much going on, and there was not a clear story. And this might seem a little bit surprising because the guy who helped write the screenplay for this film, David S. Goyer, was the screenwriter on films such as Blade, as well as the Dark Knight trilogy. So you'd think with having a screenwriting team like that on the project, the film would actually turn out good. However, that was not the case. Now, Matthew, let's take the main point out of the way with this film. It was really trying to put a fight to Marvel. Because at this, in 2016, the MCU was, really, Captain America Civil War was being released. So there was a lot riding on DC to kind of cash in on Marvel's success and all the success Marvel was having. However, I think what DC did wrong was that Marvel took a long time setting up films, setting up the Avengers. The first Avengers film was released in 2012, but before that you had several solo films with Iron Man and Thor, Captain America. With Batman vs Superman, you had Man of Steel before that, which was not exactly a crowd pleaser. It made good money and got okay reviews, but it weren't like Iron Man. Does that make sense? It didn't blow audiences away like Iron Man. So when this film starts off, of course, it's showing a human's eyes of the final battle scene in Man of Steel with Bruce Wayne portrayed by Ben Affleck. And the first thing I'm going to ask, well, the second thing I'm going to ask you, Matthew, is what do you think of the performances? Like, Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, are they good in the roles?
Yeah, for what they were given, I thought yeah they're pretty decent. I thought Ben Affleck actually made a pretty decent Batman, if for what they were going with for this older, their how they were going to do it was this older, more gritty Batman that's seen, and experienced a lot of, and was set up to potentially like why the way he is because he's like, he's experienced a lot of trauma. We get hints that his Robin was killed by the Joker, um,
Mm.
and lots of things like that of like okay, this Batman could be potentially really dark, and I thought Ben Affleck's performance in the role he was given was quite good, though I think that they would later on in their plans for the DCU
Yeah.
waste Ben Affleck's Batman, and as we all know how that's all turned out. He's no
Oh,
longer going to
yes.
be playing Batman, but for what we saw of him, I actually did want to see more of Ben Affleck's Batman from his performance.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill's Superman, yeah, I think he does a decent role with what he's given, but though it's more a problem of not the actor's performance, more how they write Superman, which there are a lot of
Yeah.
complaints of what they say about Superman is Superman's meant to be more of a brighter, more bit more optimistic character, whereas in this they made him really dark and depressing, and they tried, as we saw in Justice League, how they tried to retcon this, but how it completely failed in Justice League. But yes, the Henry Cavill's performance was decent, but how they wrote Superman was a bit.
Yeah. I remember before this, when Ben Affleck was cast in the role of Batman, there was people up in arms because they said he wouldn't be right for the character. The only comic book character he had portrayed before this was Daredevil, and that film was torn apart. So a lot of people said Ben Affleck can't be Batman. Although I think, as you've said, I think Affleck he puts 100% into his performance. You can tell that he really wanted to play this character and wanted to do it to the best of his ability. So I think this is the film in which Ben Affleck is like 100% committed to Batman. In the later films, you can tell that commitment starts going out the window. But in this film, at least, he's committed. Henry Cavill as Superman is good, although if this is like technically a sequel to Man of Steel,
Yeah.
you know more about Batman at the end of this film than you do about Superman, which is ironic because Superman has appeared in two films prior to would have appeared in this was Superman's second film. This is Batman's first, and yet you still don't know a lot about Superman or really have any feelings for him. There's no connection. I do understand what people say about the tone of Superman. He's supposed to be a bit lighter. He's supposed to give hope. In this more gritty universe, I think it's all right. I just think it loses its way a bit. They could have done a lot more with Superman's character in this film. Now, of course, this film's long. Like, this is a long film, and it takes a long time trying to build up the suspense and the rivalry between Batman and Superman,
Yeah.
so the tension's built.
Yeah, I think it's too long.
Mixed success. Yeah, mixed success, I would say, with that. They kind of seem to hate each other out of nowhere, to be
Yeah.
honest. They disagree with each other's crime fighting styles. Batman hates Superman because he thinks Superman's got the potential to kill the entire human race, so that's why Batman hates Superman. And of course, we get some lovely dream sequences trying to establish the DCEU. So, I mean, when you saw this film originally, did it annoy you that there were so many Easter eggs and kind of trying to set up all these films? Did it
What I
annoy you?
mean, potentially yes, if they followed through with it and actually, the things they were setting up actually meant something. Whereas looking back at it, it was just like they're just trying to make things to make people go, oh wow, look what my look what's look what the look what's coming, what they're gonna do, and then you see like they don't follow through with anything they set up, whereas like with Marvel they plan everything out, to the detail, so
Yeah.
every like reference bit will mean something, whereas in this film it meant nothing.
Oh yeah. I would definitely say Marvel are a lot more subtle with their Easter eggs, and their references,
Yeah,
trying to build up. That's why post-credit scenes
but they mean
exist
something.
in the MCU to set up other films. And at one point in this, Wonder Woman like opens a file with like
Yeah.
logos
Oh yeah,
for all the
and
DC,
they've already
and
got
it's
all the
just
logos.
come on,
Yeah.
come on, man. You know Aquaman's being made. You don't need to show us a little 30-second video showing Aquaman and all of the. It's not. I don't know what that added to the film except to say we're DC and this is what's happening.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah.
basically
I
what that
thought that scene,
was.
them scenes were a bit stupid, to be fair.
Well, yeah, because it didn't add anything to the film. It felt like an executive just
Well,
ran
most
in
of
and
it
said, "Well,
didn't
we need
add
to Easter
anything.
egg these films. We need to set them up."
Yeah.
And it was, of course, and that's one of the problems with this film. It's so busy on trying to set up other films that it loses track of the film it's actually showing to the viewers on screen. In another scene, you get the Flash kind of turn up to Bruce Wayne and start saying, "You need to do something. You need to kill Superman. He's going to kill us all."
Lois
And
is
when
the key. No, she wasn't.
yeah, and when you look in retrospect, that scene doesn't make whole lot
No.
of sense because so that's the problem. A lot of stuff said in this film is trying to reference other things and set up things. However, it doesn't actually pay off when you consider the direction they go with after this film.
Yeah.
Now, now, there's a lot of controversial things in this film. We've already said Ben Affleck's casting was very controversial. Um, Another controversial element, which some people loved and some people hated, was Lex Luthor. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that this Lex Luthor is really bad because it's not really like the Lex Luthor from the comics
No,
or
it's
the
more
other
like the
Superman
Riddler.
films.
People
No.
say.
So, what's your opinion on Jesse Eisenberg performance? Like, is it a
Well, you
good
see, the thing
performance?
is
Was he
with Jesse
just
Eisenberg,
cast?
it's Jesse Eisenberg.
Mm. that's, that's very true.
Like, he's not really Lex Luthor. It's Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. People say his performance, like, yes, he does give this, of the character he was, like, of this, like, this insane person. He did give off quite a good, element, and a good performance went into it. But people are saying the performance he was given, the character he was given, wasn't Lex Luthor, and in fact, people compare his performance more, to other Batman villains such as the Riddler.
I was gonna actually say that. Do you think that if instead of being Lex Luthor, they made him the Riddler in this film, do you think that would have made the film better? Would it have made more
Possibly.
sense? Yeah,
Well, not
because
sense in terms of the Riddler being the villain in this movie, but Jesse Eisenberg playing a character like that would.
oh yeah, that's very true. I feel sorry for Jesse Eisenberg because he's really trying in this
Yeah.
film, and he's
Oh yeah.
obviously working
There's
with
no doubt his
the
performance
script.
was good in it.
You know, like all the actors, they're working with, as you said, they're working with the material they've got. If the material's not very good, then an actor can't really change that unless they're like really well known and have quite a lot of weight with studio executives. They can't really change that. They got to just go with what they've got. Now, Lex Luthor's actual plan is very complicated and all over the place.
Yeah.
He basically wants Batman to kill Superman so he can make super soldiers based off Superman's DNA. It's
Yeah, don't
very
really.
confusing.
I still I can't really remember what
No,
his actual grapes were with Batman or Superman. Apart from,
he does.
everyone knows The only thing I didn't really understand his motives. I just know, yeah, Lex Luthor hates Superman in the comics. That's why.
Yeah,
That's why he's doing it.
I think that's what a lot of people. I think that's what a lot of people thought of it. Now, part of me, because there's so many plot lines in this film, is that Superman dangerous? Should he be put under control? Basically, what Civil War was doing. Do superheroes have too much power? They need to be controlled. They're putting lives at risk. And that plot line is not actually that bad, with Superman in the courthouse and things
Yeah.
like that. I felt that plot line worked. You could have made Lex Luthor's motives a lot more simple. He's this businessman who actually feels Superman threatens humanity, and he wants Superman controlled and all that. And I feel like if you made Lex Luthor, gave him that motive, it would make more sense than what the film actually gave him, which was a very confusing subplot about him. Now, of course, Superman and Batman hate each other, and we get to this fight scene, which, of course, in the trailers, this is what people went to see it for. It's Batman versus Superman. So everyone wanted this massive fight scene between Batman and Superman. And I remember watching this film, and I was sitting there, and there was like a 10-year-old kid sat a couple of seats away from me. And when the fight ended with you have to save Martha, and why did you say that name? I remember this kid turning around to his dad and saying, "Is that it?" And I think a lot of people, this fight scene is pretty short. It's pretty short. Now, what's your view on this fight scene? Did you think it was good or just ended badly?
Well, I thought the fight sequence was actually, entertaining to watch, but, the resolution of this fighting was, yeah, the reason why they stopped fighting was over, the fact that they both, Superman's mother's name was Martha, and then he was saying, "Oh yeah, shows he's human after all because he's got a mum."
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people try and explain this, but it's a little bit of a weird scene to end on, like this dramatic fight scene, which actually some of the action in the fight scene is not that bad. It's pretty good, and it's great to see Batman and Superman fight. But I just feel like in like the story that this is based off, The Dark Knight Returns, I'm pretty sure it's called, or that comic storyline is based off, is done a lot better. I mean, I've seen the they've done an animated film of Batman versus Superman done before this. They fight because their ideologies are very, very different. Whereas Batman thinks that all the establishment is against them, and needs to fight criminals himself. Superman's a lot more, we can't just fight these people, we have to work with the justice system and things like that. And it's those two different ideologies coming together and fighting. That's the tension. In this, Superman doesn't even really want to fight Batman. He's fighting him to try and save his mum, who's being held hostage by Lex Luthor. So the whole tension about this fight scene doesn't make a lot of sense, because surely couldn't Superman just have said before they started fighting, "My mum's being held hostage. Can you come and help me? We've been set up here." Like that fight scene didn't have to happen, if that makes sense.
No.
Superman could have just used his brain and said, "Yeah, we need to go and save my mum," and it would have been fine. But no, there had to be a massive fight scene, which could only be ended with "Save Martha." This very underwhelming, the end fight scene, compared to how it was built up in the trailers and all the hype. Very underwhelming, the actual fight scene itself. And of course, we then get the finale of this film, where Wonder Woman shows up.
Yep.
And it's against Doomsday. So
which was
probably
pretty much shoehorned in because they ran out of substance for the movie. They thought, "Oh crap, we've run out of substance. Let's just put something in, typical, as we say every time we discuss the DC EU, Typical DC
Yeah,
fashion. Big, we gotta have this big, massive fight scene because
yeah.
despite what the story thinks, we could wrap this movie up. We could make a nice resolution, but no, we need this big spectacle at the end. That makes no sense, but
Oh yeah. As DC haven't learned. I mean, Man of Steel, you had a massive fight scene at the end of it, and this film is just the same, except it's against Doomsday. And I'm pretty sure 90% of the people, when they knew Doomsday was in this film, had a rough idea of where it was going.
yeah,
If especially if you're a Superman fan, and plus this Doomsday doesn't really look that impressive. I mean, I've seen images of Doomsday. This one looks like a troll from Lord of the Rings. It doesn't look very. It doesn't look unique. It kind of just looks like a standard monster alien type creature. It doesn't. It doesn't stand out. I mean, I don't even think they call it Doomsday in this film.
no,
So
they don't make
it
any
could be
reference to it.
Doomsday. Who knows? Yeah, but and of course we get the heroic sacrifice of Superman killing himself to
Oh,
or sacrificing his life to save to save humanity.
I felt
And
nothing.
yeah,
I was like,
I'm
oh,
pretty sure everyone.
oh, he's dead. Oh, I felt nothing when I saw that they killed Superman. I was like, oh, it's big heroic sacrifice. I'm like, do I care? Like
And that's
like how they did it, and then well, because they're gonna bring him back anyway. There was no emotional impact because well, it's only they yeah. It's not like the sacrifice of Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame where you actually felt something when you saw his character end, and then you see Superman make this big sacrifice. It's just like right.
well, actually I've said there's two reasons why there's just like complete opposites: Iron Man's death and Superman's death. Number one, Endgame set it up. They set up all about Iron Man, and when he sacrificed, as you said, you felt something. It was like, oh my god, he's done this heroic sacrifice. And number two, you actually knew Iron Man. Iron Man had been on
Yeah,
screen for like 11 years by that point, so you were very close to his character. You knew who he was. You knew where he was coming from. You felt something. With Superman, this was the second film, like the second film in the DCEU, and you've already killed Superman. And plus, everyone knew that Superman was gonna appear in Justice League anyway, so his death meant nothing. It was just, I honestly believe they thought, well, a big film like this has to have a death at the end because
yeah.
people will get emotional because there's a death at the end. I honestly believe that's what went through the executives or Zack Snyder's mind. They just thought, well, we need to kill off someone. Why not kill off Superman? We can bring him back. So there's no, Superman's not gonna survive. So what was the point of killing him off? Made no sense. Left no impact. That storyline should have been saved for a future date. Maybe the third Superman film or something, or maybe something like Avengers Endgame, the DC's equivalent of that. In a future Justice League film, Superman sacrifices himself. It would have made a lot more sense, and it would have felt. It would have felt like you actually felt something when you watched it. You felt emotional. With this, there is none of that. Especially as Batman starts acting like, oh my god, he's dead. He was our savior. It's like, yeah, but like 10 minutes ago, you were trying to kill him. So you changed your mind very, very quickly there.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to, well, see if there are any things we can agree on that are good about this film, stuff which is actually really impressive. Now, I think one thing you'll agree with me on is the score.
Yeah, because they had Hans Zimmer. I mean,
Yeah,
this was his last. He as he said, Hans Zimmer said this was going to be his last superhero, film score he was ever going to make. So, yes, Hans Zimmer always makes a good score, and you can never deny that.
oh yeah, definitely. He definitely put his all into this score, and it's got some beautiful segments in it. which you can still listen to actually to this day, even without watching the film. They're that good, some of
Mm.
them. Another thing is the directing. Zack Snyder is a little bit of a controversial director himself. However, I don't think you can deny that the style he uses is done really well. The Bruce Wayne's parents' deaths in this film, in the opening, I thought that was beautiful scene. I thought it was done really, really well, and a lot of the action scenes, especially when Batman fights the henchman in the warehouse when he's trying to rescue Martha. I've heard a lot of people that has a lot of characteristics with the Arkham video game, like
Yeah.
Batman's fight style in that, and I thought that was done really well. Like Zack Snyder did a good job directing this film. Now there is, of course, people call it the Ultimate Edition or the Snyder cut. Zack Snyder has basically released the director's cut of this film, which is 30 minutes longer than the theoretical release, and that's better than the theoretical release. It explains some things which I didn't get in the original.
I've never watched the
There's
extended cut.
Oh, I would no, I would
I've never
recommend it.
watched
It
it.
explains some. Some of the plot holes are solved by that extended cut. Some clearly aren't, but quite a few are solved by the extended cut. And of course, so why have we included, or why have I included this film in unboxing the controversy? What makes Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice such a controversial film? Well, this film is controversial because a lot of DC fans, especially, really wanted this film to be successful. Because for those who, for those DC fans who have seen the MCU go from strength to strength, they really wanted to see the DC films become like a DC extended universe because they could see the potential there.
Yeah.
And this film was supposed to be the big thing. It was gonna start 10 years worth of DC films. If the last decade has been a Marvel dominated decade, they wanted the next decade to be a DC dominated decade. Now, for me personally, I'll ask your view in a second, Matthew. For me personally, I always thought that this film wasn't going to be a success because I didn't even though I enjoyed Man of Steel, it was no Iron Man, and
Oh yeah.
plus I felt like DC were rushing this. They were rushing the extended universe. You got to remember, Marvel Phase 3 which is got some brilliant movies. Every film in Marvel Phase 3 has been outstanding. So of course DC just wanted to get all of the origins and setting up stuff out the way and just start with like Avengers level films.
Yeah.
That's what Batman vs Superman was supposed to be, and it flopped because they paid more
Oh yeah,
attention
definitely.
to setting up an extended universe than they did focusing on this actual film. Now, do you think Zack Snyder should have any blame for how this film played out? I mean, he had more influence over this film than several others that
Well,
he's done for DC.
he was the main, person driving the ship for this movie. Like you said, they tried to do what Marvel did in 5 years in one movie. Trying to set up all these characters and then make you think, oh yeah, this is going to be a bigger, universe, and you're going to have you're going to have such a bond with all the characters that we've shown you in this movie. Even though, it's the first time we've shown you Batman, it's the second time you've seen Superman, and we're going to try
Yeah,
and do, this big crossover event already after one movie, which
yeah,
which at the time Marvel, had something like 12 movies under the belt already.
yeah,
And
and
well,
and the
before even, Marvel did their first, crossover event, they spent time introducing, well, most of, should I say, all the characters in the movies, especially all the main Avengers who had been set up in previous movies already. Whereas all the characters that turned up when they crossed over was like the first time seeing them.
Oh yeah, Marvel had definitely proven before the 2012 Avengers film that they could handle Marvel characters and they could make good films. They had proven that they could do that. So when Avengers came along, it felt like a payoff.
Yeah.
There'd been a couple of years setting this thing up, and then the Avengers paid off. with this film, they were trying to rush it. And also, this film, Batman, the DC Extended Universe is strange because, of course, it doesn't have a Kevin Feige figurehead. There's not one man in charge of overseeing the entire project, especially in its early years. Zack Snyder had creative control over this project. He weren't like an executive. He weren't the executive of DC. He was just a director directing this one film.
Yeah.
So it's very weird, strange to see where they intended to go with Batman versus Superman. They didn't really have a 10-year plan for this film, for this universe. They were kind of just doing it as and when. Now, do I think that the DC should have released films like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam first before Batman versus Superman? Maybe. You know, it might have been different seeing those films first. However, I think we can both agree the downfall of the DCEU started with this film.
Yeah.
This wasn't the nail in the coffin. This wasn't the film which destroyed it completely. However, this film really did show that all that hype generated about the DCEU was going away. So by the time Justice League came around, no one was interested anymore.
No.
So, have you got anything to add? Any closing bits? Or
no, I think we've summed it up
else?
perfectly. All this hype and no payoff, that just left people just going. And then like you said, by the time Justice League came along, they tried to fix a lot of the flaws people have, but then accelerated all the problems this movie had. Character development, shoehorning everything in, cheap, and lazy resolutions to plot holes and yeah.
Yeah, Batman versus Superman did suffer. It's the last thing I'm going to say. I think it was released at the wrong time, in the sense that, MCU, Captain America Civil War, the start of Phase 3 was such a big film. Civil War was the biggest Marvel film up until that point, of course, until Infinity War and Endgame. So this film was never going to be able to compete with Civil War. It just weren't. I think, not just Batman versus Superman, but every DC film has had to go up against a Marvel film, which is bigger and more significant than their own film. That's probably why we didn't see any DC films really released in 2018 or 2019. I mean, there was Shazam, but did anyone watch that? I don't know.
I watched it. You watched it.
Yeah, I saw photos when you set me up the audience. There was no one there.
No one else wanted to go see it, and they forgot to turn the film on.
Did they actually?
Yeah, it was a bit delayed.
I didn't know that. I forgot to turn it on.
Yeah.
God, even the cinema didn't want it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this discussion. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And if anyone is watching this, do you have any suggestions for controversial films me and Matthew can discuss? Because we do these discussions once a month usually.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to get some
series.
thoughts on. I'd like to thank Matthew for being involved in another discussion.
Yes. Thank you. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Yes, that's what I was waiting for. He might be fired now. That was a very awkward silence. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we will see you in another one.
Goodbye.
See ya. And
before we go, Tommy, what is this series called?
Unboxing the Controversy.
I've got something for you. What have we got in here?
Oh, you'll just
look what's in here. Controversy.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Let's agree to never speak or talk about that again. Actually, that's a good gimmick. We'll use it next time.
Bye.